Buddy, this is A7XfanBen. I'm here with Creeps, and this is Pirate CSG podcast episode number 47. How are you tonight, Creeps?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm awesome. Very excited about stuff.
How are you doing? Yeah, I can imagine. You've got a lot of stuff going on in your world.
Yep. So when did you get into Pirate CSG? How did you start?
How did I start? Well, Pirates exactly was. I'd always basically searched out games, and I had gotten to a point where I was moving around a bit in the country, which wasn't normal for me. And I ran into a guy who knew the game. I think he had picked it up pretty much right off the bat. And he had introduced it to me, and I had never heard of it. Didn't really know of WizKids per se either. And we played it one night, and I was intrigued. And kind of looked into it. We played a couple more times. I bought a little bit into it. At that point, I think it was the thing that was easiest for me to get was Davy Jones. I think he was running Revolution at the time. And okay. Played it. Then of course we parted ways with him, or I parted ways with him. So I had some stuff around, and I looked into it, and I was, I dabbled a little bit on my own. Played with my daughter, and just it kind of sat there for a while. Did another move. Came to my current area, and again tracked down the game store, and was walking around, and it was probably a Saturday or somewhere thereabout, and it was kind of busy and lots of things going on. I was just seeing what they had available. It looked like a decent place for gaming. They had another area it's a book exchange. I am not affiliated with them or anyway, but yeah, Augusta Book Exchange. Went in. As I was walking, the manager came over to me. Must have noticed, hey, he looks kind of wide-eyed and lost. Let me go talk to him. And we talked a little bit about my background. And I said, and there's this, and I noticed you have this poster for Pirates. And he's like, yeah. I was kind of interested, and you guys sell much of it. And he's like, oh yeah, we just had an event at 10 a.m. that you missed today. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, yeah, we had an event earlier today. And I was like, oh. So I kind of went back, looked at what I had, arranged, kind of came back in, made sure I just what the events were and so on and so forth, and kind of went in. And that was the first really competitive stuff. Event. That was the, what's the better word for it? When a company, they, drawn a blank.
Like sponsored or organized?
Sponsored, organized play. Thank you. Yes, that was the first organized event. I'd played some D&D, but that was more, just friends.
Yep.
I'd played D&D at places, and people kind of jumped in, but I didn't really think of that as organized because TSR or Wizards of the Coast wasn't sponsoring it. So, and then, as with a lot of people, the game just, kept growing and growing. And it was nice to have that introduction to a game like that. I've kind of always been, I was actually up until that point, I was kind of against collectible formats.
Yep.
And in a way I kind of am, in a way I'm still kind of against that format, but I understand it completely when you're dealing with organized play. And there is definitely a draw to going in blind and just opening up, maybe having an idea of what's available and formulating in your mind, oh, this would be nice or this would be nice. But then, suddenly having something handed to you and having to work with it is really appealing. So yeah, nice. It's a good format for that type of, for a competitive environment or for an organized environment. Yeah. Boosters are, a good way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense too.
And I'd have dealt. Yeah. And it just, but then it bled out a little bit. Well, after the transition from Tops to NECA.
Yep.
Our privateer kept it up as best he could. At that point, it got down to a lot. There was some good price support. Actually, pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think I maybe had played before the transition like a year and a half, maybe 2 years tops. And the price support came in a little bit. I think I remember at least two coming in, and it after the price support stopped, he did the best he could, and it worked. People loved opening, crack some packs, and then everybody picks, everybody gets to choose from what's available, depending on. And of course, he kept a couple, LEs aside for like first, second, or third, or whatever.
Yep.
So it was, and then we were probably looking at maybe 16 people on a couple of. I think I remember there was one occasion when the manager, who was actually, which was nice, he was a fan. He actually, one of the new sets came in. I forget which one exactly. He basically bought like a case or however many, probably a case. And he just said, well, these are mine, and you guys come in, and you throw down, I remember what the price was, but a small amount. And then there was some price supported. But then everybody returned the ships at the end of the event. That one ended up being really big. I mean, people who weren't, I think people who were coming in to play other games were like, what? Wait, I can play this game for like, that much, and I get the possibility for, okay, sure. So like a couple people shifted over from other games. And I don't remember how many ended up being in that one, but that was, I don't know. I mean, it couldn't have been a whole heck of a lot, but probably not more than somewhere there about. But it was fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's when you have a good store, and of someone who's actually able to set aside some time. I mean, I think that our privateer got, he basically was he was given a bunch of price support, and I'm assuming he would probably have gotten a factory set, just at least a factory set at some point if he showed that he was going to stick he or she in with it.
Nice.
So he was probably getting pretty good stuff. I think he mentioned that, yeah, they're taking care of me.
Very nice.
So, yep, it just went the way of a lot of games, which seems to be the case over time. Some games dwindle and disappear. Some dwindle, kind of fade away a little bit, but then do their thing. And then some just chug on.
Yep.
You just kind of hope that you get the ones that chug on, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And I hope you're lucky to find the good ones with good support and good. Pirates has a pretty deep community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing you're more of a player than a collector then, probably, since you don't like the collecting.
I am, and I just lost a little bit of volume on you, but no, I'm a little bit. I mean, I came into it playing, and I mean, over time, you want to get, you're going to play regularly. You want to get good ships, of course. So I did look at other. I was. That's when I started. Collecting stuff. I mean, I collect. Sure, I'm a collector as well, I guess you could say. But you just, the gaming is the most important part for stuff like that. And that's kind of where the boosters and things like that's where it can be a negative. In that, if you have a good game and you want to get the most out of it for your money, it's kind of hard if you're just actually buying into it and you're not actually getting the event type environment and that group environment, and you're just buying and hoping, especially like with boosters, if you're buying, there's a good chance that you're going to be buying a lot of boosters before you get those 2 or 3 ships or crew that you want.
Yeah.
So, and again, I'm not sure if it's on my side or on your side, but my volume is down here. I'm not hearing you very well.
Okay. Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit, but it should be all right, I think. What's your
Okay.
favorite aspect of the
Um,
game in general?
Say again.
What's your favorite aspect of the game in general?
Favorite aspect? Oh my.
If you have
It's
one.
okay. It's non-linear. Um, it's yeah. It's just once you have everything set up in front of you and the game starts, you have a wide open board or map or whatever you want to consider it, and you can when you maneuver within that space and you have obstacles and goals, um, and then you have an opponent thrown in there. It's just it's nice to be able to have that freedom of choice as to things to do,
Yeah,
and pirates once within the fleet that you have and within the layout of the map that's for that game. Then after that you have freedom to do what you can do with what you have, and I think that's probably the favorite.
yeah, I agree with that. I love how you can just sail wherever you want, do whatever you want, and you can be a player that just makes chaos and doesn't really try to get the most gold necessarily. Especially if you're a faction like the Cursed, sometimes that can be a lot of fun, even if you're not trying all
Yeah,
out to
and
win every
actually
game.
now, and oddly enough, I think you have actually mentioned this yourself. The strategy that I played probably most prevalently was I actually would go and I would build gunships, and I wouldn't even worry about gold beyond. I'm going to sink, and I'm going to hope that they have an odd number of treasure on the vessel that I sink,
Yeah.
and I'm going to blockade as best I can, if possible, their home island.
Mm-hmm.
And I played that on SOE, the Pirates Online version.
Yep.
I played that a couple times, and it really did not work because I was definitely dealing with people who were, top form
Yeah.
there. Not saying that the people, I mean, well, not saying that the people that I was playing with at the book exchange some of them weren't really, really good. But when you have a 20, or a 16 people playing, I was for a long time that person who was coming in and completely naive, and it was just, yeah, and trying to figure out, okay, now, I'm going to add this new particular crew. Okay, this crew sounds interesting. Now, how can I incorporate into what I know already?
Yeah.
Um,
How
and
did
that's
the blockade strategy work? Because I've seen opponents not do well with that. I don't know if you remember it working at all.
and so oddly enough, so on the SOE, it worked rarely. But for me, when I played it, every time I played it, it succeeded. I
Interesting.
somehow, in fact, I remember at least two games where a couple of the other people had finished their games, and it was people standing around watching to see if my opponent could make it back into their home island. Oh, he's fast. Can he get around him? And there's really blah 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 blah. And
Yep.
somehow somewhere they made a mistake,
Huh.
and I was able to get them, and it just boom, and it's like, okay, end of game, and it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, and I'm like, yeah, I know. And that was, and for me, it's just, and I think the reason that I kept playing it was because it kept working, maybe. Um, so
Nice. Yeah, that's interesting
so
to
yeah,
hear.
that's the nice thing about it is sometimes it depends on the ability. Some of those abilities people look at and scoff, and a lot of them I did for. I'm like, I never played. Excuse me, that's not true. Same action twice, and sack commanders,
Yep.
or extra action. Excuse me, extra actions. I never that was. I don't know if it was played. I think occasionally. I never really looked at them because I never really appreciated them for some reason.
Hmm.
I played it HMS Titan one time, and it did not go over well. Once it came in, suddenly people knew what it was, and I was like, what? And it's like, oh, it's that ship, and I'm like, okay. And it did what it was. Although if I remember correctly, I think the one time that I tried to use it, it didn't work, and
Yeah.
that was kind of like important to the game.
Huh.
Um, but I think I ended up winning still.
Yeah.
Um, and
Interesting.
it was that, and it's just like, okay, and just do the reception that it got. It's like, okay, I'm not bringing extra action crews like that ever again.
Yeah, that makes sense because
Same action twice.
yeah,
Say again.
they put such a target on you, kind of like a 10 master, that immediately other players come after you a lot of times.
Right, right. And I think I did the same action twice. Oh, let's see, what was her name? Ooh, I should have that stuff in front of me. From Spanish Main,
Calico
one of
Cat,
the same
maybe.
action twice
Yeah.
uh, characters, and I don't remember if it was. I didn't use her again. I don't know if it was just the same kind of this doesn't, or if maybe she didn't play into my game strategy as well as I thought it might have.
Yeah. Interesting.
But even without that type of stuff, and that was kind of the environment. Without those, I remember Piranha talking on your previous podcast about how people, which was a problem. People were doing same action twice. Okay, now I'm going to do my extra action. Now I'm going to do this particular thing. And then and if I remember correctly, wasn't there like a 5 action combination you could do or something like that if your rolls were right?
Yeah, before they did the 2 action limit, you could string a lot together. Do stack, regular, extra, same action twice. Yeah. Yeah, it got ridiculous with some of the setups.
Yeah. So so it was a relief, and I think it may have been. I remember there was a lot of conversation about that ruling. I don't know if it had been for a long time or what, but I remember that and the discussion about that not only at the game store but like online. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
yeah,
think Wolf said that the 2 action limit had been like a house rule or kind of like an understood rule for a long time. I don't think it became official until the Savage Shores rule book at the end. At least I don't think. So, yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely a good
Well,
thing.
actually, let me here look. In Pirate Code. No, let's see. Oh wait, I've found my little folder. Like tournament rules
Nice. Yeah,
for
sometimes when I've
eight.
dealt with blockades, when I broke them in the past in a few games, I was lucky because I had the ability of Commander Temple on a few ships, like the New Orleans or the Philadelphia, which allows you to explore an enemy derelict and then you can warp them back to your home island, which is
All
a
right,
great blockade breaker because then you've got all of a sudden you have 2 ships docked at your home island that don't actually have to sail into there physically past the blockade.
correct.
So that's a really good ability to have to break blockades.
Sorry, I'm kind of perusing this,
Yeah, no,
trying to
I can
see if
keep
there's
going.
anything about time.
Yeah, it's all good.
But yeah, yeah, and that's in gold running. I remember there was one game that, or one event that at the very end of it, the privateer actually commented that every game had been won by demasting as opposed to um, bringing gold back. And he was just up until that point, that was not well. I mean, not that that had not occurred occasionally, but that he thought it was interesting that every game had been won by that tactic,
Yeah,
going in and demasting.
interesting. Yeah, a lot more fighting than gold running.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sadly I have not made it quite to the end of your podcast with Piranha, but he had mentioned something about some house rules about just changing the gold up as opposed, and we never went into anything like that. There was a lot of talk about house rules, and there was a campaign that, which unfortunately I never participated in, but there was actually, they did have a campaign going. Some of the players that had been playing prior to when I arrived, and the privateer, and they had it was a reoccurring, and they would bring it back out, and they would set things back up, and it went on, and
Wow.
that's it's
Yeah,
it's
that's
nice
one
to
thing
see
I. Yeah.
that type of dedication.
Yeah, that's one thing I haven't done with a campaign game is like take it down and set it back up. But I know Captain Mike has done that in the past. I just like to leave things set up, but for that you need kind of like a dedicated room or table that you know won't be disturbed for long periods of time, which can be tricky, especially in a game store where you need, table space every day or every weekend. So
I have a hard enough time doing that in my own home.
yeah,
Kind of like I don't remember, on the Facebook forum, someone mentioned about how he had carefully taken everything out of packs and not to scratch them and put them together, and later found them in the tub. And it's like, well, hey, hey, they're attractive. They're fun to look at. And where should a boat be, Dad? Shouldn't it be in the water? It's supposed to be in the water, right? It's like, okay. So yeah, it's tough to sometimes, and that's the unfortunate thing. It would be nice to have a couple of games going and have enough room to let them sit out, and then when the people that are available are available, which is,
Yeah.
I guess, the nice thing about online. You do that on Vessel.
Hmm. Yeah. What's your favorite memory of the game? Or you could go plural if you've got a bunch of favorite memories that you can't pick from. But
Oh, memory.
I don't know if
I
you
mean,
remember your first pack, for example, something like that. Nostalgia.
no, just I guess, okay. Well, oddly enough, considering I don't use Musketeers much, but the first game, he said, here, my opponent offered up Crew, and I'm like, oh, hey, Musketeer, that's so threw him on, and and then trying to work that in, and suddenly realizing, there's not a lot of situations where this is the play where I want to. Then Firepot specialists popping up,
Yeah.
and things like that. It's like, okay, here's an alter. Famous favorite memory. Hack. Um, not can't say. I mean, well, it's a sad one, but when the shift between the two companies, a lot of product went in to storage and then was sold off. And on eBay, there was a lot of stuff that went up that people had bought lots of, and they put a price on it. And seeing, and again, it's a sad one, but seeing like a $40 factory set of Mysterious Island and
Yeah.
saying, wow, okay, that takes care of that collection. So I don't need to worry about it. Um, and then, just seeing some odds and ends, like, oh, okay, wow, if I just had the money, you know, and then just grabbing a few things here. I mean, there was a foam ish. It just said Whiz Kids. It was probably something that went with one of the people somewhere, and when they set up shop, they set it off in the corner. Kind of, there were some foam, 3D Star Wars pocket model displays that one of them is what an AT-AT that stands about 14 inches tall, which is actually still up in my gaming area. It's up there. There's also a little representation of an X-wing, which was from that same the Star Wars pocket model. So it's getting that and being able to say, wow, this is something new. And looking at and having seen the big the ships. There's on one of the Facebook forums or something. There's the ships of one of the Seattle-based group. And I think
Yeah.
Piranha mentioned something. Yeah, well, no, he mentioned a different ship. My apologies.
No,
But
that's
yeah,
all good.
there's those big ships that apparently they took out in the park and let people play. And seeing that and knowing then that hey, there's all this stuff out here. And yeah, I think he mentioned that it's like hey, he stumbles across Wids Kids products, and he's like, wow, that looked cool. I wonder if hey, I would wish I could have been part of that. And then finding out there's more to it. Um, finding things like the Zypods. It's like, wait, what? That's Zypods. What's this thing? Oh, somehow some algorithm pointed me to Zypods. I'm like, look at that. That's in. And then Creepy Freak. And it's like I'm looking at Creepy Freaks, and it's like this is interesting. I'm trying to figure out now, is this something that maybe I could a game that I would be interested in? And okay, there you go. And then finding oddly enough, and I do not do garage sales much, but finding a pack if somebody had gotten a bunch of Creepy Freaks, and it was still in a little box that they had made for it, or a container. And I'm like, hey, Creepy Freaks. Okay, I'll grab this. And I bought it, and I was able to kind of finalize it much more easily. And just that whole I guess finding okay, there we go, finding Whiz Kids, I guess,
Yeah.
um by way of what I would consider maybe one of their best games, although Sorrow the board game that they put out is actually very good and still out there.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Oh,
Pirates is yeah. Well, no, Pirates is far away.
yeah,
I guess finding whiz kids. There you go. Finding.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Do you remember any favorite fleets you used to use, or if you have a favorite faction from back in the day?
I was actually thinking about this earlier. I probably it ended up being American. I mean, I've throughout early on, of course, I was thinking, oh, it's got to be Pirates because Pirates has so much to work with. But I find myself, well, I Franklin, one of the questions that was up at one of the your site or on Facebook, what was your favorite ship or something, and I think the Franklin for some reason, not exactly sure why. Um, Really, I try to, yeah, even if I see it, I'll watch it, and I'll, if it stays low, and or I'll put a low bid in on it, and if somebody bids out me or outbids me, that's fine.
Yeah, I see.
But and if and so that's so I used and then Franklin's the USS uh, Kettering
Nice.
was a miss for me. There was an event that I participated in that I ended up winning, and the people that were standing around the table was, of course, he's going to take the Zeus because apparently the privateer had a few Zeuses because the Zeus was usually available at each event as a prize support, and it usually ended up whoever was winning got the Zeus. Um, and they're like, oh, he's going to, and at that time, I think he had just gotten in some new prize support. So I'm like, okay, I'll grab the Zeus. And the guy who got second got the USS Kettering. And everybody was like, oh, hey, and oohing and eyeing about it. I'm like, huh, what? And it's like, oh, yeah, it's a long ship. I'm like, what? What's a long ship?
Yeah.
And then they explained it to me, and it's like, oh, wow, okay. So so yeah, and then so I think that maybe plays into it, and I if I remember correctly, since it was Revolution, that was my first, the first set I probably played. So I would have to say, and I think I remember playing the U.S. faction. In
Yeah.
the end, I'm probably lean. I would not that I don't try to, yeah. Ships or fleets. Um, eh, the one that we played the other day, I like.
Yeah.
In that it has I like ones that, I like to incorporate like silver explorers
Nice. Yeah, that's
and
very rare.
+2 gold type things.
Nice.
Um, so and then of course that means I'm going to be including things like Cannonball Gallo
Yeah.
on. I think my Zeus has Cannonball Gallo. Uh,
Yeah, that makes sense to put him on a 10 master because then he's more protected from boarding parties and he probably won't get captured, at least in a small game. Yeah, +2 gold is just underpriced, one of the best ways to win the game. Silver Explorers are something I haven't really used much. I don't really see silver used often. I feel like it's always just
well,
forgotten
and that's the
about.
nice thing about Yeah, that's the nice thing about it too, is well, I mean, and using it is again, it's just on one little thing, and that kind of that meta play that he was talking about, that Piranha was talking about.
Hmm.
Uh, in a sense, I guess I try to meta game, but I don't play a lot of competitive. I did play after Pirates kind of went by the wayside. The Privateer and some of those guys were playing Monster Apocalypse by Privateer Press, and I was going to stay away from it because again, I did not want to get into a collectible situation. But it's a good game, and I got into it, and and then it kind of went away, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Hmm.
I did play a little bit of Hero Click at the store at events, and then other things like Arcane Legions by I forget the publisher of that particular game. They ran a couple events for that, I played a little bit of it, and that was nice in that when you bought something, you knew what you were buying. You bought an army pack,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
basically had that army pack, and you had a lot of stuff to work with, and you had a limited amount of number or limited amount of points to deal with.
Hmm.
Never got into Warhammer or anything like that, though. It's a good, it's a good. I'm sure it's that type of tabletopping is fun,
Yeah.
but I never went that route.
Mhm. That actually brings
Um,
up an interesting
so
question. Since you don't like the collectible aspect as much, you'd rather have like faction packs or something like that. Do you have like a preferred distribution method specifically for pirates that you've thought about or like fantasized about if the game came back? Like if you could have it any way, in terms of
anyway, well, see,
release.
that's therein lies the rub, because in order to, I
Yeah.
would love to have that organized play opportunity, and
Hmm.
it is really, booster packs are really nice. Going in blind there is something very fun about that,
Yeah.
and it adds to the fun factor in my.
Hmm.
Although if you pull that one or those, you're handed three packs and you get, not good stuff, and you're like, oh my,
Yeah.
it kind of takes, yeah. So it's a double edged sword, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, Pre the army's set up, being able to, that, that's a good. I've never really done that competitively. Um, so I don't know how I actually feel about that. Um, but in order for if it was to be released again, I think I would prefer that method myself,
Yep.
in lieu of organized play. Although I'm hopefully maybe there would be a way to do it with organized play. I think if I remember correctly, Piranha said that at one point he kind of went in and they came to him and, so what's going on? He's like, well, we're not exactly, or someone was not exactly sure how to distribute it. And it's like, well, I can see that problem, because it's, there's a lot of ways it could. Army packs, which I think, would you consider the Savage Shores stuff? No, it was still kind of blind packs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mostly
was still
random.
kind of
Yeah.
blind.
I mean, you could see the one ship in the
Um,
window, but that didn't really tell you a lot. So.
but if I remember correctly, when I bought them, they had them set up where the there were, I don't remember how many cards, like 20, 25 cards in a wrapper, and if I remember correctly, a lot of the ones, because I was at that point, I was lucky enough to be able enough money, and that came out, I just went ahead and get a case,
Nice.
and so they bought, my local game store me up with the case, and so yeah, that in the end I was able to make, if I remember correctly, that although I was missing a couple deck plates for the uh, 10 man. So I
Yeah.
did have to overtime scrounge, whatever. Um, so, but yeah, it was whatever the distribution they did there was getting there.
Hmm.
If they could maybe have, if their intent maybe was to try to bundle stuff, together, then maybe you might want to let people know what the groups are.
Oh,
But yeah, something like where you could get a couple ships and some decent crew, and I guess faction released would be nice. So yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think faction packs make a lot of sense, especially because with the booster packs, it's really hard to accumulate enough generic crew, especially captains and helmsmen, to run a faction fleet properly, unless you allow generic crew to use their abilities on any ship, which I like to do for new players, but it is kind of
right,
weird
right,
to
yeah.
pull a helmsman that's cursed and not
Then
even
there
have
were
a, you might not pull a cursed ship in the first 5 packs you open, so yeah, it's
exactly.
kind of awkward sometimes.
Yeah, that did kind of come into play. Um, but if you have a good moderator, they have ways like one, our privateer basically had a house rule that if you didn't draw any crew, you could basically proxy a common crew from his set of stuff that he had
Yeah,
in.
that's a good idea.
Um,
Yeah, I've done similar where I just give little pieces of paper that say captain and helmsman on them to new players because I know they're not going to get what they need to compete at any adequate level. Not that it's competitive with like new players, but still, you know, I don't enjoy dumbing down my own fleets just because I'm playing new players that only have a few packs. So, and of course I've given stuff away to new people too to get them started, but I like just having I like people to basically have unlimited generic crew available for every fleet they build, because I think it just makes more sense. And having a
True,
limited collection
true.
can actually dampen, at least in my opinion, their experience with the game. So I like to set them up with quite a lot right out of the get go, even if it's just little pieces of paper and not the actual crew chips. Because it's so much easier to proxy those than an actual ship. Like if you don't have HMS Titan, pretending a French Five Master as HMS Titan is not as much fun. But then if you got a piece of paper that says Captain on it for 3 points, that's a lot easier to proxy. So
And then along when you were talking about that, you were asking about some of my favorite moments. Another favorite moment was after I did get a Zeus, the like time, and that was I did get a couple of them.
nice.
At some point, if I have, yeah, they dried up and all, but after I think it was maybe the second one, and people were like, talking about, when are you going to bring it? When are you going to bring it? I'm like, what? It's like, when are you going to bring the Zeus? Talking about it's like, well, it was constructed. Next month it's constructed. And I'm like, okay, come on. And I'm like, all right. So then what? And I brought a Zeus to an event. And that just having that little bit of notoriety, I guess, was kind of. I think it was more about the Zeus than me, but it was still. It's like, come on, you got two of them. Come on, bring it.
Yeah,
It's like, all right.
yeah. That reminds me of being a kid and like the kids. One kid might have a better Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh card than another that everybody else had, or they might have something that people don't have because of rarity. And yeah, the same thing would happen. They would get notoriety because of that, rather than because they were good players, things like that. So I do remember that from my childhood a little bit. Yep, regardless of the game, especially for collectible games. Any memorable game moments that you remember from your playing days? Like if there's a crazy come from behind win or like some wild ramming and boarding game, stuff like that.
Probably um, a good one. A good one would be was um, a sealed event, fire and steel, getting switchblade, and I was not a huge RAM board person. I mean, occasionally I would use a RAM if I saw, hey, if I RAM and then I use the cannon, I might be able to blah blah blah. But then just going and saying, okay, well, wait, switchblade, I'm going to be ramming as best I can, blah blah blah. And then and being able to ram two ships simultaneously, and the carnage that ensued, and that was fun.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Switchblades are amazing.
having saying, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying Switchblades are amazing. They almost always enhance the games I play, even though I'm not usually a fan of that kind of the pokey ships. I don't like as much, but Switchblades are my favorite because they almost always make the game more fun. But yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah. And then a sad one would be like a bad one for me would be like a rules. And I should have at that time. Sadly, at this again, Pirates CSG was my first organized play, and I wasn't, I wasn't quite into the whole what organized play was about. And I should have said, Judge, Judge, come here, please. It was like the last game, and I forget the gentleman's. He was actually pretty good, and it was I throughout. I there was yeah. I was concerned about him, and it was the last game, and it was for the win, and he went to do a broadside, and I was kind of like broadside, okay, and I just didn't know exactly what it was, and he went ahead and did it, and he missed. Then I ended up winning. But then I come to find out later that broadside is an ability, so he shouldn't have been able to attempt it anyway. And if I had, if I'd known it and been able to, when I think about going down there, and
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I've
and
had
then of course,
similar. Yeah,
having kid just, do everything and get a game in and use things and watching stuff that come together and watching them realize how it comes together. And then, winning, joy, haha, success, just
Yeah,
that type of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. That must be fun to watch. That's really cool. I know. I wish I could
Yeah.
have a
I
time
mean,
capsule and like watch myself play my first game a while back, but yeah,
yeah, I agreed. I wish I could be sitting in that with up across the table.
yeah.
Yeah. How does this work again? This musketeer. Now how do I? Now I'm going to get this musketeer doing something. What do I do with him?
Yeah,
Well, first we got to get the ship up here. I'm like, okay, now how do I do that again?
yeah, yeah. I know. There's so much. I know people. I mean, it started off as a beer and pretzels game, as they say, but the rules can be kind of complicated, at least for non-board gamers getting started with it. You know, looking at the rule book, there's a ton of tiny text, and there's just a lot of rules to try to memorize. So yeah, it can be
Yeah,
complicated to start out with.
yeah, and unfortunately that was uh, on Board Game Geek, one of the podcasters, no, excuse me, vloggers, Dice Tower, Tom Vassell and D. Garcia, and I'm forgetting. My apologies, sir. Forgot the last guy's name. I'll remember it later. And they do breakdowns of games, and they do top 10 lists and things. And unfortunately, they did a top 10 worst games in their mind. And Z mentioned Pirate, and I think his thing that I've noticed that a lot of other people have a problem with was that since the rules were kind of spread out and you actually had to track them down to get an overall complete understanding of the rules, it would just a lot of the stuff, the cards over when you have card abilities overriding the rule set,
Yeah.
then you start getting into, and this is an unfortunate thing that I'm sure, I don't design games, but I'm sure this is the problem that a lot of people deal with, is you make situations foresee, and I think Piranha brought that up,
Yeah.
and then you have to amend, or you have to try to bring something in, alleviate that, and then you start getting creep, you get power creep,
Yeah.
and so yeah, um,
Yeah, one thing that I has have disliked is how the keywords are spread out as well. Each complete game rule set only has the keywords for that set. So if you're using a turtle ship, but you're playing a game, you know, somebody else only has the Revolution rulebook, you have to yank out your SCS or OE, I guess, rulebook and tell them what the turtle ship does because they might not have it in their rulebook. So it almost looks like it's not legitimate, which is too bad. So yeah,
and then that's why I actually have my little, I went and it's got the it's got some of the old, actually my, I found out there's some WizKid stuff here, and it's from Wolf. What do we got here? Thread is, what does a treasure ship do? Of course, Wolf replies, and then I think this was the thread that people directed him to. People, and what is it dated? It's visit, his join date. Well, it looks like it's about, oh, here we go, 2008. So
well,
March of 2008.
nice.
And so I printed that up, and I would carry those to me or with me for a while. And that was my set for a while when I went to the book exchange. And
Yeah.
then over time, some more stuff came out. And then actually there was some, here's another 2008 competitive tournament rules. So WizKids organized play. So this must still be from the WizKids site. Oh, yep, WizKids 2000. And then
Nice.
we got a pirate code.
Yeah, I've printed out a bunch of stuff too.
So
Yeah, the master keyword list is super useful because then you do have all the keywords in one place, which is great. And yeah, some of the old
and one,
WizKids site is still available on the archive.org site, the Internet Archive. You can find some
oh,
of the
cool.
WizKids stuff. Almost none of the forums is like
Yeah.
visible, but you can kind of do a kind of a time capsule back to
Yeah.
the last decade.
I keep catching myself going some of the files that I pulled off of miniature trading before they went dark.
Yeah.
I keep going and looking at them, and I was like, okay, now what does this ship do again? And I'm about to go up and press and touch on it. It's like, oh yeah, that doesn't work anymore, does it?
Yeah, it's just a picture.
That was,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
which
done
is sad. And
similar.
I feel, I feel somewhat partially responsible for miniature trading disappearing. I mean, when I first found it, after I think I first started going there while WizKids still had their stuff up because I liked the feature.
Yep.
It was nice to be able to build fleets there. I built them, but then I usually put them down on paper. I never really saved them in the archive. And then after things went away, it's like, oh, this is a nice place to store stuff.
Yep.
So it's, and then, yeah, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure I was going with that.
Yeah, that's all right.
But yeah, just and yeah, yeah. And then so I actually did throw some money at them for a while when I was actually in a position. It's like, okay, I've got some disposable income, so I was actually, throw a little bit of money at National Public Radio and throw a little money at miniature trading, so on and so forth.
Nice.
And then there were the tournament. What were the not tournament challenges? The build. What was it?
Oh,
What were the
fleet
challenges
challenges.
that were on? Would say fleet challenges, right?
Yep.
And at one point, I was actually picked as the fleet for that particular challenge, and it was kind of the understanding that when that happened, you would make the next fleet challenge. And sadly, life stepped in, and that if I had had my wits about me, I would have probably like posted, "Oh, my apologies. Can I pass it on to whoever the next person?"
Yeah.
But I just kind of went, I just appeared, which is my apologies to anyone and everyone for that. And and the worst part about it is I had an idea, I had the fleet. I think my problem also is that I am more of a pen and paper guy.
Yep.
And keyboards and I do not get along, which was one of my things about miniature trading was I liked putting fleets up, and when I didn't necessarily want to have to explain myself and
Yeah.
explain what it was about.
I do that
Sure,
sometimes.
I would maybe say, hey, so on and so, and I would, for me, it would be more like doing a role play type thing, and do in the comments, yar, so and so does yar, and be done with it, and then move on. But then people would start like saying, oh, okay, now what does this do, or what, why this ship when you could have that ship,
Oh God.
which is a little bit less and does pretty much the same thing, and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily explain myself. I just have, and sadly for some people that was, you pull something from a pack, and no, I'm sorry, I don't have an opportunity to run that other ship.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. I had that issue for a while
and
when
it
I
was
first
just,
started making fleets on miniature trading too. Because a lot of times you want to make stuff from your personal collection, and you might only have 100 ships out of the 1,000 that exist, and you just can't really help it. So I've had the same thing. Yep.
I did have a couple locked ones. In fact, the fleet that was supposed to be the Great Unknown, which was going to be the one I was going to run for the fleet challenge.
Yep.
Um, I had locked, and
I
you don't
remember
want to
that.
have them locked, but I had a couple of them locked because I wanted them there, and I would love to have shared them, but I just didn't want to have to go through the whole explanation as to what I was going to do with it. So
Yeah. Yep.
that's kind of as far as forums are concerned. Although, if something does come up, I will spend some time. Like one of the other forums for Monster Apocalypse. There's a group called Team Covenant. I think they're still around. I think they're basically like store owners, and they were very big into Monster Apocalypse. Like they were hey, we're going to do tutorials and things for it for a long time. And one of the guys had mentioned, the Shadow Sun Syndicate, and he was tired of. He was really upset because there was one Zor Maxim was a limited edition. You basically got it as a prize support that was kind of overpowered. And as soon as people got them, they would run Shadow Sun because, of course, you want to run the Shadow Sun. And so he was like, "Oh, I hate when it's just." He was kind of that whole if you run Shadow Sun, you're an evil, terrible person. Ha ha ha, you. And for me, I was like, kind of. Well, I shifted into Monster Apocalypse. That was the next game I went into, kind of competitively
Okay. Yep.
or organized. And the other factions, or I think there were like 6 or 8 of them, were dinosaurs and gorillas and cool space aliens, and then you had these guys who were kind of blue and kind of was not kaiju or whatever. And everybody was kind of, oh, look at the little blue guys in their pink tutus. And that was kind of like, well, nobody else wants that stuff, so I guess I should be able to get stuff pretty easily for trade. So I went that route. And then, so that was when the first series came out. And then the next series came out, and Shadow Sun got a couple pieces that were better. And I started actually being able to, which was nice because when I was not playing competitively, I was able to figure out how these Shadow Sun guys work. But then the next series came out, and they actually had some good, what was it, the katanas were little things on the ground, or I don't know, maybe that was the third one. And I was actually starting to actually hold my own. And then, Zora Maxim came out, and the third set, I don't remember what it was, but it was overpowered. And it's just like suddenly Shadow Sun was like the end all be all. And he was like,
Yeah.
slapping people around for that. It's like, well, I can remember being poked fun at with little pink tutus and things. And, you kind of may, and so.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That
that kind of goes
reminds
to the
me of
forum things. And it's
reminds
just,
me of the Banshee's Cry or something. Some of the overpowered ships from pirates. Something just comes
but
along
yeah,
and
if you
just
have it,
blows other stuff out of the water.
but if you have it and you've only got that point and two or three or whatever you have, and it's like, well, I could throw them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Throw them at the end. That makes sense. Yeah.
And while you're at it,
Yeah.
might as well throw the Haga Tortuga on.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Anything else you want to give a shout out to before we end it?
I don't know. Do miniature trading, Pogo, HeroClix.
Nice.
I mean, I basically started off doing miniature, excuse me, uh, military simulation board games, and ones like Avalon Hills, Blitzkrieg are probably my favorite again because it's a big open map and you can move it around and you can defend in one area and so that's kind of, and I kind of got into balloons. We forgot about balloons. No, never mind. I'm not going to talk about how the possibilities of putting balloons into the. That's a little. Covered that. Covered that. Yeah, I think we're good. I mean, I'd
Awesome.
like again started off with military board games, got into D&D for a while. I mean, my family has always done games. If you ever have a good game is Pit, nice and loud. I can remember as a kid, you basically are trading commodities and you're talking and you have cards in your hand and you're trying to get 5 of whatever or 4 of whatever, and you're trading, but you can't tell what you're trading. So you're just saying two, 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 and somebody else gives you
Okay.
2.
Yeah. All right.
That's a good memory as a family games.
Yeah. Nice.
D&D kind of got me where that type of stuff. Party card games, Monster Apocalypse, HeroClix, Arcane Legions, Pokemon. Shout out to Pokemon,
Yeah.
I guess. Magic, again, another one of those ones where it would be nice if you could just say, okay, I want to play black, and then be able to play black. And it's, yeah, I would go more into Magic, but then it gets collectible, and you can't really do it and be happy, I think, in my personal
Yeah, that
opinion,
makes sense.
unless you have unlimited funds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel the same way. Yep. Yeah, it sounds familiar without a doubt. Yeah, thanks
Which is
for
nice about,
listening. And we'll be back maybe tomorrow with another podcast, myself and Xerix, hopefully.